So hello everybody, I am back again, and I just wanted to continue where we left off. We did two financial statements already. We did the income statement and the balance sheet, and now I want to do a very simple one, and the simple one is called the statement of retained earnings, and this is the net income on the very bottom of the income statement that you've made for the year, and of which any cash dividends would be paid to the stockholders. Sometimes you don't pay any dividends to the stockholders, and you keep the money to do R&D or grow the company, such as Google does, right? Google doesn't pay dividends. Now, you have a choice in your car company whether or not you want to pay dividends. And many companies make that decision. It's normally made by the board of directors. Now, the statement of retained earnings is very simple. If we look at it here was our retained earnings on January 1st, the very beginning of the year. You can see that amount right there. Here are the net profit after taxes on basically the income statement. And here's the dividends we paid, right? We paid $10,000 in preferred stock dividends and $98,000 in common stock dividends. So our total dividends were $108,000. So if I add up these two items and then subtract off 108, my retained earnings balance at the end of the year will be $1,135,000. So when I do the retained earnings statement next year, in January 1st, 2016, let's say, this number will appear up here. Hold on. Okay, that will appear up here. So we just keep this going forever and ever and ever. And as you can imagine, a company like Google has a huge retained earnings balance because they haven't paid any dividends. All right, so that's that simple one. Now what we have is the statement of cash flows. And this is going to give us a summary of the three types of cash flows we'll be concerned with. And this is a very important statement. If you don't have cash flows, you're going to have a hard time running your company. So, basically, you'll have three cash flows: the cash from operations, the cash flows from any investments you make, and the cash flows from any financing you make. Okay. Now, on a personal note, let's think of it this way: this cash flow, the operating, could be your paycheck, right? Money comes in. This investment could be, let's say you basically have dividends from stocks or your savings account, right, that you get some interest. And financing, you could have just borrowed money and they give you a check and put it in your savings account. So on that standpoint, it's very similar from a personal level. Okay, so here is our three statements of cash flows. So here is the cash flows from operations, right? And here is number 2, cash flows from investments. And here is cash flow from financing. So there's the three we talked about. And basically, here's the items that make that up. Now, you'll have to, what you're trying to do is generate cash for your company, okay, so you can run the company. So here's the bottom line from all these activities, right? And you can read about this in chapter 3. Here's the bottom line for all three of these. Here's the cash flow from your investments. Maybe you invested in gross fixed assets, right? And in equities, like I said, you could have invested in other companies' equities. And here's the cash flow from financing. Maybe you borrowed short and long-term debt, and also you had to pay dividends. And basically, you could have issued more stock or paid some stock off. So this basically makes up the third one. And the sum of that guy right there, 500, and the sum of 347, which is negative in this case because it's in parentheses. I hope everybody sees that. And the cash flow from financing, again, which is negative, gives us, we add those up and we get a net increase in cash and marketable securities of $92,000. And that makes up the fourth income statement that we have to worry about. So I hope everybody's clear about that. If you're not, always email me. And as I mentioned, if you'd like to come Thursday, I'll be up at Stony Brook, so we can have a session on the Zoom project if you have any questions. Okay, so I'm going to move away from the international financial statements. Now let's get into some important stuff called ratio analysis and using financial ratios. And these are methods of, again, you can see it calculating and interpreting financial ratios, and you're going to analyze and monitor the performance of your company. So these are real important, just as when you go to a doctor and you get a health checkup, right? He's going to tell you ratios about your blood pressure and your cholesterol, and he's going to read important numbers to you. So a lot of people are interested in how the company's doing, and the way you find out how the company's doing is you simply use ratio analysis. And I just want to highlight that here, right? And it's important. So a lot of people have concerns about the performance of the company, as we said, as the performance of your health. So there's a couple ways of looking at ratios. We can do a cross-sectional analysis, and we can compare our company to different companies in our industry and see how we do compared to them, right? That would be like me comparing my blood pressure to someone my age who's another person, right? Then we have benchmarking, in which the firm's ratios are compared to those of a key competitor or group of competitors that it tries to emulate. So basically, it would be like a company trying to emulate Apple, and they're trying to, a smaller computer company, and they're trying to see how they did. So also you can look at the industry as a whole. Even the industry as a whole has ratios, and you can compare your numbers to the industry as a whole. So the cross-sectional analysis, again, is you're looking at your ratios at over time, and you can look at other firms, right? All right, so let's keep going. So here's a typical ratio, inventory turnover. Okay, this is one that's important. We'll look at the equation in a little bit. You'll notice that the industry average is 9.7, but Caldwell Manufacturing is turning over their inventory 14.8 times a year. Now, everyone should realize a higher number, the better, right? That means you're selling more product. So if your inventory turnover is 14.8, that means you're turning over your inventory almost 15 times a year, which is better than the industry, which is a little less than 10. I hope everyone's clear about that, okay? All right, so here's some typical ratios for different companies and different industries. Home Depot and Lowe's and Dell. You could compare these and look at the different ratios as you read Chapter 3. And you can clearly see they're different for different industries. All right, now, time series analysis is the evaluation of the firm's financial performance over time. So this would be similar to as if you went to the doctor and he said your blood pressure was fine 5 years ago and then got a little higher, 4 years ago, and then it continued to trend up. So you're looking at your ratios for the company over time, okay? So you can see the progress if the company's doing worse or doing better. So you can look at multi-year comparisons and see if there's a trend that's being developed. And you could also look at, a time series analysis of your company versus another company, see if they're doing better over time or if you're doing better. So you're doing a combination there. Okay, so look at over here the average collection period. Now this ratio, the average collection period in days, is saying how long does it take you to collect your money, right, on your accounts receivable. Now notice how the industry as a whole, it's taking about let's say a little bit over about 45 days to get paid, right? It's taking about 60 days to collect your accounts receivable funds. So you've got a little problem, right? You've got to try to improve that so you get your money sooner. You'd like that so you can do what with that money? Take it and invest it, okay? All right, so I'm going to move on and I'm going to show you the first ratio. And the first ratio is called the current ratio. And this is going to measure the ability to meet your short-term obligations. Now, the current ratio is simple. You take the total current assets on your balance sheet and the total current liabilities, and you simply divide them. And you'll notice your current ratio here is, if you look at the income statement, is about 2. Okay? That means for every dollar in liabilities, you've got $2 in assets. Okay? Which means you have ample assets to cover your liabilities. All right? Okay, so I want to move on to another one. And I want to talk about the quick acid test ratio, which is very similar to the current ratio, except it's basically take the current assets, and in this case, you got to subtract off the inventory, because you may not be able to get rid of your inventory as fast as you like, and you divide that by the current liabilities. So it's very similar to the current ratio, except we remove the inventory. And you can see here it's about 1.5 to 1, which again tells you that for every dollar in liabilities, you got $1.51 to cover them. So you're doing good, even without the inventory. All right, so if you look here, I want to show you something important, and this will be the last slide I do for tonight. All right, look at these inventories. Look at the current ratio for Dell, Home Depot, and Lowe's. They're all the same. Everyone noticed that? 1.3. However, look at the quick ratio when I subtract off the inventory. You'll notice that Home Depot and Lowe's, right, you've been there. They carry a huge amount of inventory. So look at the quick ratio for Dell, which basically is pretty constant compared to the current ratio. But look how the quick ratio drops because of the large inventory that we subtract from Home Depot and Lowe's. So you'll notice how the inventory makes a big difference. If you have any questions on that, please let me know. It should be something that you should be familiar with. All right, so I'm going to stop here, and I'll pick up on after this on the next presentation. All right, I hope everyone's clear. Email me if you're not.